Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Today, it's not Wednesday. It's actually Thursday, April 23rd. Sorry that took so long. It's Thursday, April 23rd, and this is the Crucible Act 1, Part 2. So we are finishing up Act 1, starting on page 24, I believe, is what we're going to look at. Before we get reading today, I want you guys to look at this concept of groupthink and hysteria. And I've mentioned these words to you before. Groupthink involves a community of people who normally are very rational and reasonable, smart, but they are making illogical and irrational decisions because they desire to conform to the group. It's when a group of people act without thinking because they are together. Okay, so we can think of examples of groupthink. This picture really does a good job of explaining it. So people blindly following each other without thinking or using their brain. We've even seen this recently with the whole coronavirus, like the idea of the toilet paper not being present in stores because people are illogically and irrationally hoarding those things and just kind of conforming to the idea that it might be limited, and then that caused hysteria. Before reading, I also want you guys to think about this concept of hysteria. Groupthink often leads to hysteria, and hysteria is an uncontrollable outburst of emotion or fear, often characterized irrationally by laughter, weeping, etc. And hysteria isn't always bad. Sometimes it's hysterical laughter because something is really, really funny, but it's that uncontrollable outburst of emotion. And when you hear the word hysteria, what do you actually picture? What examples have you seen of hysteria, personal, communities, global, historical, and maybe what characterizes hysteria? What does it feel like? What are the characteristics of it? I know one time myself, I was almost in a car accident with my friend. The windshield wipers stopped working in the far left fast lane on the highway during a snowstorm, and we couldn't see out the front window. So we rolled down the windows and had to stick out our heads out of the windows in order to navigate the car over to the side. And I found myself hysterically laughing out of that notion of fear. Okay. The other thing that I want you to note is that some psychologists believe that mass hysteria is a form of groupthink. In cases of mass hysteria, the group members will all develop a common fear that often spirals into a panic. So again, that's like the idea that the toilet paper is going to be limited. So it becomes this common fear. The group members feed off each other's emotional reactions, causing panic to escalate. So be on the lookout today as you're reading for examples of this mass hysteria in today's reading. I want to introduce you to a couple of new characters. First of all, we're going to talk about Rebecca Nurse and Giles Corey. These are very respected members of the Puritan community. They're older and wise. And then Reverend John Hale, who's actually not a long-standing member of the Puritan group, but he has now found himself in charge because he is the religious leader. And of course, we talked about how the religion and government were mixed in this type of situation. So now what you're going to do is you're going to start reading Act 1, Part 2, which starts on page 25 and goes to 48. It'll take you about 20 minutes. So pause the video and go ahead and read that particular section. There is no reading guide today. We're going to be responding to a question and posting a flip grid at the end of this assignment. Okay, guys, now that you are back, we're going to talk about 4 different discussion sort of points as you guys are looking at this section of chapter 1 or act 1. First of all, we're going to look at Rebecca Nurse, and I told you she was one of the respected individuals, and we're going to talk about what warnings does she offer the town. We're going to look at the struggle with democracy. How might certain characters use the situation to gain political power? And then we're going to look at Reverend Hale. He's that character that we talked about who is newer to the area, and he's the religious leader. What is his role in the situation, and does he help it or harm it? And then the genesis of hysteria. Why do Abigail, Betty, and other girls freak out? Okay, so I'm going to take you to the text itself here. We're going to start looking at page 25. I'm going to turn my marker to yellow. We're going to first look at Rebecca Nurse. Rebecca Nurse, it says, is 72 years old. She enters and she's white-haired and leaning upon her walking stick. So she's older. And Rebecca is really talking about they're using her wise situation to say, hey, this isn't sickness here. Something is going on. And I think that if you look at page 27, she talks about, I think she'll wake in time. Pray you calm yourself. She's telling everybody to calm down. She says, I have 11 children and I'm 26 times a grandma. So she is wise. She's been around the block before with girls, and she understands that they all have what they call their silly seasons. So this is sort of a warning to others, like, hey, let's not pay attention to what these girls are saying. I think there's something else going on here. She goes on to say, there's really nothing to be afraid of here. Pray, John, be calm. And she says there's nothing to be afraid of. Okay, so then what we see is Proctor comes in, and Proctor is another member of the community, and Putnam, Thomas Putnam, they're also members of the community, but this Putnam really is looking for evidence. Okay, he's looking to see signs or evidence of this situation. And so he says, you cannot command, Mr. Paris. We vote by name in society, not by acreage. So he's basically, Proctor's saying to Putnam, hey, democratic money and wealth do not give you power. We're all in this together. So he's speaking how he wants it to be a democratic situation. But then we see here, Paris is talking about, he says, I do not wish to be put out like the cat whenever some majority feels a whim. And so here we see our author, Arthur Miller, is actually talking about the danger of democracy, that sometimes when everyone acts together, the majority can actually take us down the wrong path. And he doesn't like the total idea of democracy, and he believes that religion matters and we have to use our brain as well. We can't just act and think like the majority. As we go on, we see this notion of the devil may become evident as a weapon designed and used time and time again to whip men into a surrender to a particular church or church state. Again, it's a problem with panic causing people to act and to going along with that groupthink idea and not using their brains. As we move on, we see another character, Reverend Hale, who is really, he comes in and he is really book smart, okay? So he says, it's good to see you again. He has all these books and they're weighted with authority. So he's basically saying, I think we need to look to these books to find the answers, as opposed to with Rebecca the nurse, who's more wise because of her experience. Okay, so as we keep going, Hale says, we cannot look to superstition in this. The devil is precise. The marks of his presence are definite as stone. So he's looking like a scientist to see what kind of evidence is that she has been possessed. We continue to see him looking at more evidence. Now, mark me, if the devil is in her, you will witness some frightful wonders in this room, so keep your wits about you. And so the girls are listening to Hale say all of this. All these teenage girls who are pretending to be possessed here are listening to this. And so they're likely going to provide some evidence because he says that we need to see evidence of the devil. All right, so as we go along, we see Abigail, and Abigail's been listening to all of this. And so now she's going to start to ramp up things and give them some evidence. And so we see her kind of acting out here. And she says, I never sold myself. I'm a good girl. I'm a proper girl. Then all of a sudden she points to Tabitha. Tabitha is the girl who comes in who's a slave. And she starts to blame her and point to her and say, she made me do it. She made me dance in the woods. She made me act like this. And so this is a fit of self-preservation that she is having. She listened to what the men of the society were saying, and now she's thinking, okay, I'm going to have to show them that the devil has possessed us, and so I'm going to blame this slave for causing me to do it. But then Tituba is also panicking and freaking out. She says, I don't compact with no devil. And this is convincing Reverend Hale. This is the evidence that he needs. So he's listening to this. And Tabitha is panicking even further, and she pants and begins rocking back and forth and staring ahead. So she's trying to figure out, what am I going to do here? They're going to kill me. And her life is on the line. So then she starts to point out other people. She's like, look, there's Goody Goody, Sarah Good. She was the person. Mrs. Putnam says, I know it, and supports the accusation. So this groupthink is happening and panic is ensuing. Mass hysteria is happening. Abigail rises and starts to feel inspired and cries out. And then she starts naming all of these people. These people saw the devil. And Betty gets up and she says, oh, and let me add these people as well. And then Hale, instead of saying, oh, nope, these girls are freaking out, this is ridiculous, and listening to Rebecca, the nurse, about the hysteria, no, Hale says, glory to God, it is broken, they are free. So he jumps on the bandwagon, and he believes that they have indeed been possessed by the devil. So the girls actually got out of trouble by accusing others of worshiping the devil. All right, now let's take a minute to go back to the slides for Act 1. And if we look at those questions again, what warning does Rebecca offer the town? Well, she says that the girls are, in fact, going through a silly season and we shouldn't trust them. The struggle of democracy, well, here we have Arthur Miller actually pointing out some of the dangers of democracy and how mass groupthink and hysteria can happen when more people are agreeing with each other. And then Reverend Hale, what is his role in this situation? Well, he harms the situation because he goes along with the hysterical girls. And then what is the genesis of the hysteria? Well, Abigail, Betty, and the other girls are freaking out because they want to save themselves and get out of trouble. So after reading, I want you guys to post to Flipgrid. Okay, so find the link on the Flipgrid topic on Google Classroom. Now, yesterday you should have said hello to me on the first hello link, and you should be on Flipgrid. And now I want you to actually respond to the topic that I've posted. You're going to choose a line or passage from Act 1 that you want to perform for your classmates. Now, have fun with this. You can read it dramatically. You can get completely into it with a costume or prop or something, or involve other people, or you can just read it dramatically. Record a 2-minute or less video and be creative. Have fun with this. This is meant to be fun. Again, in order to find it on Flipgrid, you're going to find this green button and press that and record your response. The other thing that you have to do today is a discussion post. So you're going to look at this particular question. How are groupthink and hysteria influencing or controlling the events of the play so far in Act 1? So looking at groupthink and hysteria. How might making decisions using groupthink be dangerous? Consider both the text and real world. So don't just do the text, but also think about the real world. And we have plenty of examples right now in this time of history. You should write 3 to 5 sentences providing your answer and your reasoning. And you should also read your classmates' answers and even respond to them. So you might pick one to respond to. You guys have been doing this. You understand how to do it. And I look forward to seeing your Flipgrid post. Bye, guys. Have a great day. If you have any questions, hop on my Zoom meeting, and I'll talk to you later.